Hi, and welcome to our second session of Downtime. So excited today to have Catherine Hernandez here to speak with us, with Roland Gulliver, the director of TIFA. Before we introduce and begin, I just want to acknowledge, even in the digital space, where we are, and we are where we are doing our work and living. We are in the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat, and the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Anishinaabe Three Fires Confederacy to care for and operate amongst the Great Lakes. This territory is also governed by an agreement between the Mississaugas of the Credit and the federal government of Canada. And more importantly, I think we are on a long journey around decolonization and even within our cultural practices and within our institutions. And I want to say working towards that process. Without further ado, my honor to introduce Roland Gulliver, director of TIFA, who's in Scotland currently. This is part of a partnership between TIFA and the AGO on 4 series of conversations between artists and writers on their practice and life during COVID, and Catherine Hernandez. And Catherine, I'm going to read your bio just because you are a wonderful, impressive person who I feel fortunate to know. Catherine Hernandez is a proud queer brown femme author and artistic director of Be Current Performing Arts. She is of Filipino, Spanish, Chinese, and Indian heritage and married into the Navajo Nation. Hernandez is the author of the novel Scarborough, which is soon to be a major motion picture. I'm so excited to talk to you about that. And won the Jim Wong Chu Award for the Best Unpublished Manuscript, a finalist for the Toronto Book Awards and Evergreen Forest of Reading Awards, the Edmund White Award and the Trillium Book Award, and longlisted for Canada Read. She is currently, Crosshairs is her second novel. What's the pub date for that, Catherine?
September 1st here in Canada.
Very exciting. So without further ado, I'm going to disappear and looking forward to hearing Roland and Catherine in conversation. Please ask questions in our Q&A function, and Roland and Catherine will answer at the end.
Thank you so much, Devyani.
Brilliant. Thank you, Devyani, and thank you to the Art Gallery of Ontario for their partnership in the project and for hosting us and for helping make this project happen. And hello to Catherine Hernandez. I'm delighted to meet you in the new normal of the digital space.
That's correct, yes.
Very excited to be talking to you. I'm here in Scotland working for the festival as a new director, but so I'm half here, half living in Toronto. Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Scarborough, which is I'm basically on the eastern lip of Toronto. I'm 1 river away from Pickering here in Toronto. So that's where I live. And I apologize. I thought that it was going to be super romantic having me out here in my urban garden. And I'm hoping you can hear me despite the trucks going by. So
yes, we can.
Yes,
and some excellent outdoor sounds that some of us miss and crave.
Yes, exactly.
We are in, I think for Canada, this is the 11th week of negotiating this pandemic, the lockdown, we're moving into different phases, experiencing different forms of anxiety. How has it been for you as a writer? Because, you have a new book coming in September. You had a film project, which was cut short by the crisis, and then you also have a theatre company. How are you dealing with those kind of parts of your creative self?
Well, it's been a real challenge, and a great challenge for someone like me who has a great amount of privilege walking through this world, even though I am queer femme and I do have chronic illnesses. The truth is that I'm safe at home. I'm not working the front lines. I'm not putting myself in danger, and I have a choice to be home to keep my family safe. And so I feel extremely blessed to have that privilege. That said, it is challenging to be a creator at this in this chapter of history. Yes, the very last day of shooting for Scarborough, the film, was cut off short because of the pandemic, but we are confident that once things are up and running again, we can get that final day of shooting in. And we're crossing our fingers that our cast has not grown too much, because a lot of them are child actors. Yeah, hopefully their parents are just feeding them, candy and letting them drink all the coffee they want to stunt their growth. And then as well, what's been so interesting is the fact that having written Crosshairs, which is about environmental collapse and the fascist fallout from that right here in Canada, just a few years into the future, it's been terrifying knowing that something that I've written not so long ago, it just feels like, and I'm sure that a lot of people who've written dystopian fiction, it just feels like just bizarre, just watching history unfold and it being so similar to what you've written. And so hopefully I'm crossing my fingers that it won't unfold the way that my book had created. Yes.
And it's interesting because when we were talking with Ian Rankin last week, and he's in a similar place where his new novel was coming out at the beginning of October, and he's in the process of copy editing and editing. For you, in that space where you finished your book and you're waiting for your book to come out, and particularly the thematic relevance, do you feel as though you want to grab your book back and change it or redefine it or respond to it differently?
No, actually, because I feel like it's a play-by-play for folks who possess a great amount of privilege, that this is a wonderful opportunity for people to learn embodied allyship. And that's what the book is about. It's like almost like one long, difficult conversation about what it really means to be an ally to those who are oppressed. And it means that if it's not in your body, it's not sustainable and it's not true change. And what I would love to see as an artist is to see folks who are able-bodied, who are white, who are of a certain class, to be able to step up from their DNA up. And that takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of training, just like you would train yourself to learn football or learn hockey here in Canada, right? That amount of investment is needed. So that's what I wouldn't want to take that back, because the book really is a play-by-play for folks to learn that it has to be in their bodies to change.
So in that sense, are you feeling impatient to get to the point where the book is published so you can kind of start engaging in that debate and dialogue, or do you feel that's happening already?
I feel like things are unfolding the way that it should, because it's going to take a moment for me to really, just like how allies have to embody allyship, I feel like I have to really take into my body what it's going to be like to have these difficult conversations and to answer people's questions in a grounded way without traumatizing myself, because I do know that there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of lashing out at a lot of fallout from what I have to say in the book. And I know that it's going to be difficult and it's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings. But I think that looking at what is happening to the world right now, we have to stop caring about people's feelings and start caring about people's lives.
Mm-hmm. So in that sense, has this time offered you a different sense of contemplation, or do you find you're withdrawing into yourself or looking at your daily routine differently?
Well, being someone with chronic illness, I actually had to stay home a lot. I mean, I still stay at home. Obviously, we're all staying at home, but everyone's living a lot like how I was living before the pandemic came about, because, even just taking the transit, I would get sick quite easily. So it just means that my family's here with me now. So, for example, my partner works as a very specific kind of therapist, as a somatics practitioner, and we've divided up the house so that we won't hear anything that's going on in those sessions, so that it's confidential. So we have like a sound machine in the hallway so we don't hear anything. And then also my teenage daughter, I'm realizing it's like we're having such a lovely time just really getting to know each other in this place and time. I'm actually quite amazed by her about how crafty she is, and how creative she is.
You were talking, which I thought was quite interesting, you were talking about the fact that you're having to change your kind of preconceptions of the route that your teenager will be going on, and kind of reevaluating what their journey will be.
Yes, I mean, like we all have, like, you know, we were taught up that there was like an ideal trajectory for all things. Like, you know, you grow up, you find somebody you love, you get your education, you like all these things, like these milestones that we think are normal, that mean success. And I guess now with the world the way that it is right now, because we don't know how long this pandemic will be going on. At this time, while we're speaking, Roland, there could be another pandemic that is in the works, just simply because of capitalism, that we are slowly moving into habitats that are leaving us vulnerable to new pandemics. So of course we should expect that this is gonna happen again. If this is the case, then those milestones are actually going to be rendered almost meaningless. And so we have to rethink these milestones, and think about, like, how can we reconfigure our lives so that we have milestones that do have meaning no matter what. So that's something that right now is going on in my mind. I know, very, very easygoing, very lighthearted conversations in my mind. Yep.
But it's interesting though, because I think as we go through this whole situation, and as we all think about it, we're all trying to respond to it in our different ways, whether we are festival organizers or writers, we've gone from the point of that quick adrenaline rush, and then we go to the point of, is this the new normal? And then we're now kind of starting to change. Do you think people will address that? You know, will they create a new normal, or will people default back into how they?
I think that privilege is something that it feels good to have. It feels good to sort of keep it, and even if it's at the expense of others. And the truth is that change actually is difficult. It hurts in a way. It's difficult to deal with a change in a system. And I think that it wasn't normal what we were living through before. It's not normal that we would be okay with homelessness and with natural habitats being taken, and a very select few having it all. I don't think that that's normal. I don't think it's right. And so I think that this is our chance to not just think of like a new normal, but think of new promise and new relationships with each other. And again, new meaning is like something that I really want to consider, especially as artists, you know, like both of us being in a place of being storytellers. I think that meaning is going to shift drastically in our bodies. So, yeah.
And so for you, does that, the way you are now, because one of the aspects we were exploring is, do you feel as though you're now having to change how you respond to culture, how you are reading books or listening to music or looking at art?
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, like, it's so funny the amount of self-awareness that you have around like watching something lighthearted, and, you know, in my mind, I'm going, yeah, I'm watching this to tune out. But right now it's not some, my body can't take any sort of really in-depth thinking at this time. I have to sort of tune out and let my body rest. And then other times it's like, I'm viewing this art, or I'm like, you know, taking this in, if it's like a book, I'm taking this in because I want to learn more and I want to challenge myself more. Those two things are happening constantly during my time in isolation.
And do you find that is a battle, or do you find that you want to, because a lot of us, do you manage how you consume the news? I think many of us,
yeah,
will, you know, particularly, you know, here in the UK, we've been staring aghast at the news and just consuming it as various things have happened over the past couple of days, but then you just feel you have to step away from it. Have you been able to remain engaged, or do you have to kind of go back and forwards a bit?
Oh my gosh. So in the morning, my partner likes to play the news, and I'm very specific that they have headphones in so that I don't listen in the morning. I mean, I have to be very intentional as to when I consume the news. It has to be not first thing in the morning. It has to be when it really does have to be like when I've done my tasks for the day. Otherwise, I start to disassociate. Otherwise, I start to just tune out to everything around me, thinking about, thinking that the end is nigh. And generally, you can't get things done. And then at the same time, I go, well, why do I have to get things done? Like I'm sure that you're probably thinking about that, Roland. I mean, like both of us are artistic leaders. Like myself, I'm the artistic leader of Be Current Performing Arts in the theater world, and you now with TIFA. Is that like sometimes you have all these like these applications that you have to get, and I just feel like this pandemic has taught me so much about productivity and really rethinking. It's like, why do I have to do this? Why are we in this weird cycle of like earning money, trying to get things done, tasks, finish it. It just seems like it's such a vicious cycle that I no longer want to be part of. And at the same time, we have to, I have to keep this house, and we have to, do all these things that are supposedly important to us, because at this time in this particular structure of the world, we need to adhere to that system in order to keep ourselves safe. But then why? So many big questions. Yeah.
And I saw a lovely article, I think on CBC, and then you've been tweeting around your garden and that kind of the fact that return to the natural world, and that has taught you quite a lot.
Yes.
And given you that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I have, I mean, like it, as said in the CBC article, as just in case people don't know about it, is that I was writing Crosshairs, and it's such a traumatic experience writing. It was so traumatic writing that book, and in order to keep things lighthearted, I would make what was called an apocalypse garden. So I would grow these plants. And I just did it as a joke, because I was like, well, I just want to grow things because, the end of the world is coming, and, I'm just going to grow plants. And it was kind of funny to me, just trying to grow plants and them just mainly just dying. And by around November, I stopped growing it because I was like, I'm wasting a lot of soil making mold. Basically, I was just growing mold. Then when the pandemic happened, I decided, I'm like, okay, no, I got to really take this seriously, because the supply chain might be interrupted because of the pandemic. It's a very real possibility. It's, and we're already seeing this right now. So I invested in 2 cubic yards of soil and compost. We have about 100 plants, all of them, like food, like, potatoes, to squash and corn. I had to learn very quickly. Every day, there's lots of Googling going on, because every day there's failures. Every day there are triumphs. Because I'm not a farmer. Well, my grandfather was a pig farmer, but I'm not a farmer. I don't know anything about this. And it's very funny to be like a suburban person having to learn what farming is. And so it's really great. Like there's something about it that it's teaching me patience. It's teaching me how to accept failure. It's teaching me to be brave enough to try things again. All of these things are very important as an artist. And so it's just given me, I don't know, it's just buoyed my spirit. And I know too, is that when it comes to wealth, is that I'm rich in skills, and also we're rich in food. All of those things are different.
And that, I guess, yeah, I think that for many people, that feeling of finding different forms of nourishment and richness, people have looked at that, and, people slightly mock that we go and we've baked or we've tended our gardens. But do you think we will be able to carry those, both in our personal lives, carry those things through this process? Do you think?
Oh, the skills, you mean?
Well, or that approach to life.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we're going. like learning how to grow your own food is going to be a skill that all of us are going to have to learn. It's just, I don't think it's sustainable the way that it is structured at this time. And I think we've known that numerous times in history where people had victory gardens. Every time, like, you know, there's a war or something, like, people just learn how to grow their own things because of lack. And even now, there are many parts in the world that they've always grown their own food in their own way, even if they have no land whatsoever and they're just doing it in containers. So we all have the ability to grow our own food. It's just a matter of being open to learning those skills.
That's true. And that kind of, those connections between how we grow our food. And I was actually emailing an author today who's written a book about the relationship of death in our society. So those elements of reconnecting ourselves to processes. And you talked about the fact that you've been having to stay indoors quite a lot. Have you been able to take the 1 hour walk that people have you been able to go out and explore your neighborhood?
We've had to do it early in the morning. So I live right by the lake shore here in Scarborough. And it's beautiful. Like we're just right near the Rouge River. And what I love about it is the fact that if you go early enough, it feels like you have the lake all to yourself. And I feel blessed to be in this place because nature's right there. And I know that that's quite the privilege, because I know some people who are living downtown don't have that freedom to be able to look at nature without there being a ton of other people. You have in downtown Toronto during this time, everyone is taking photos of the same cherry blossom tree. It's hilarious. Whereas, like, I'm blessed enough to see herons every day. I see swans, you know, like that type of thing. Just to see, like, because since moving to this, because I've lived in Scarborough for most of my life, but when I returned from being downtown, is that I always felt like the lake was always like speaking to me, and it really changed my writing practice, is that being this close to the lake, and so I don't think that I could have ever given that up if it means that I have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning in order to safely go there. And still, like, observe social distancing protocol, I will. I mean, that's how important this lake is to me. So I do have that. And then also we have the deck where I was sitting, where we have a lot of our plants, a lot of our food is growing out there. So yeah, we have like just several, we've made it so that even though our house is one of those very tiny Scarborough townhomes where it's like several tiny floors stacked up on one another like a lighthouse, we have many places for me to be creative, for my daughter to be crafting, and for my partner to do the important work that they do.
I'm going to take some of the questions actually that have appeared at the side. Heidi says, was it difficult to let go of some creative control with the adaptation of book into film?
Creative control. Well, I was the one who actually adapted it. So it's and you know what's so funny is that, you know, like feeling like having your ego challenged is something that is quite typical in theater. Like that sensation of feeling, you know, that hurt that you feel when your ego has been challenged. It's actually something that you welcome in the theater world, because you go, oh wait, we're on to something here if it hurts. I know that sounds ridiculous. It sounds like so like sadomasochistic, but the truth is that that's the way that theater works. Like you go, okay, well, what is most likely the most difficult route is the way that we're supposed to go in order for this story to work. So in this case, switching hats into being a screenwriter, it felt difficult. It felt like a challenge. It felt right to just go back to what is the main story and tell it in a completely different way, which is cinematically. And the good thing is that when I wrote the book, again, being from theater, it was written out loud and then committed to paper. So back and forth, written out loud, committed to paper. So then when I going from a playwright to a novelist, then novelist to screenwriter, is that it was actually quite easy for me to go, well, it sounds good out loud. And a lot of the dialogue is cut and paste from the actual book. It's just that the way that it's structured is more cinematic. So it's all about sort of parking my ego and going, well, that's what the book sounded like and that's how it was structured. A movie feels completely different, and that's okay.
And did that, I guess, the relationship of the writer to the theatre maker, did you have to kind of also put lots of those aside to find the filmmaker?
You know what's so funny is that, okay, again, the way the theater works is that if you're a playwright and you're in that room, you have to sort of sit back and let the team create the piece. You have to just trust that the actors are gonna say the lines better than you imagine they're gonna say them. The director is gonna imagine and stage things better than you can imagine. All these things. And so when the producers, like the directors, Shasha Nakai and Rich Williamson would say, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? I always felt like I was stepping out of line. I always felt like, oh, well, it's up to you. And that always surprised them, because I'm sure that, like you have some creative folks who are like, no, really, it has to be this. And the truth is there were very few things with them that I said, it has to be this. Very rare. Just because there's no point in, I don't know, I just feel like it's wasting time dealing with your ego. Just let it go. Yeah, let it go. And it really, your team will know what they're doing. Yeah.
And there are a couple of questions around your kind of responses to the pandemic. One from Janet saying that because of the debate around the new novel, but do you think because of the pandemic, we've altered our understanding of ourselves and others, so the potential response to your new book may have changed? And Liz asks a question, said, are you concerned about how the pandemic might derail awareness and concern that is building around our climate crisis?
Yeah.
That it becomes a later problem rather than a now problem?
Yeah. Sorry, say the first question one more time.
The first question was around, do you think the understanding of ourselves and others and the potential to your new book may have changed?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's two like knee-jerk reactions that will happen in a time like a crisis, right? Especially when there is like a lack of resources. Is that one is like, wait a minute, I've got to rethink the way that things have been, because why is there a lack of equality, right? That's one. And then the other knee-jerk reaction is mine, right? At this time, sadly, the majority is mine. And we see that. I want to have a haircut. I want these things. I want to go out. I don't care about other people. And I'm just open to it. I'm open to the fact that my book might be received as, this is a window into a way that we can change our bodies. And then I'm also open to people saying, this book is pure lies and I am not changing my body. Screw you. I'm completely open to those two ways that people are going to receive the book. And that is, okay, I have to, and that's part of my work too, is that it's like, well, it's not me. If you're ready for a revolution, great, let's go. Yeah. And can you remind me, Roland, the second question? The
second question was around whether this pandemic will mean that we will kind of ignore the climate crisis, and whether that we go, well, we'll have to deal with that later.
Oh my goodness, no, it's completely connected. It's completely connected. One thing that you have to know is the fact that we're vulnerable to pandemics because us as humans have encroached on habitats, and it has sort of blurred the lines of where the animal kingdom and us have existed. And rather than coexisting, we're encroaching on it. And when that happens, the reality is that you can bet money on it that we're going to have a pandemic. Yeah. So if we continue the way that we are continuing, we can just expect like right now, I'm already expecting another pandemic to come by after this is done, if ever it's done. We know this is science. And so it's actually, I think it's completely connected, is that we must look at the ways in which us as humans have made certain decisions that have led us here. It's just like, for example, it's as simple as right now, do you understand the looks that I'm getting from my neighbors simply because I'm letting dandelions grow on our lawn? And we're letting the dandelions grow because the bees are about to die out and dandelions are their first food. But because of social, like the social pressures, people are giving us the worst looks, leaving notes on our doors saying, please clean up the dandelions. So they would rather a lawn look nice than thinking about the collapse of like our food chain. Like it's bizarre. It is so bizarre, but that's a human thing, right? Like that's all connected with regards to the pandemic. So yeah, I think it's just important that all of it is and knowing that connection exists is really important as we move forward.
And I think it's interesting that because of what's because we've all retreated, animals and nature have grown and come into the spaces, and we have looked at them, gone, oh, that's, and Instagram the deer in the park or the fox under the bridge, but whether we then actually think about that as a process is or as a meaningful change that we can keep rather than a novelty will be the challenge.
Yes, I love the fact that you gave an example of a fox under a bridge. It's making me wonder about the landscape where you are.
I think that was a news story from in Toronto. There was foxes under a boardwalk.
Oh my gosh, yes, over in the beach area. Yes, I remember. Yeah, that they were like digging a hole underneath there. Yeah, very sweet. It's right. It's all of those things where we think it's such a novelty to see nature in our midst. It's like it's such a big surprise when you're right, that it shouldn't be, and we really have to rethink things. It's just it makes me a little sick to my stomach, but again, I mean, like the process of writing this book has really made me somewhat immune to the horror of it all.
So one last question from Tanya, who says, has being near the lake changed your writing practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely. What's funny is that I've lived, numerous different spots here in precarious housing, in Scarborough and in downtown, with my daughter. And not until I got this close to the lake did I feel like my writing became true. And I think that there was, I mean, it seems a little granola hippie, but it's that when I was even just across the street, just that much, like, 500 meters north of here, it was just enough that I didn't necessarily feel like I had to be accountable to the lake. I know this sounds ridiculous, but it was like every time I would go to the lake, I always felt like I had to make sure that my work was centering truth. It wasn't centering being clever, right? Because I'm sure you've seen authors do that, like, like writers who are more emerging and they're just like, they just want to be clever. They want to be cool. And of course, like, you want to sort of stake your claim in the literary world, but the truth is just center story, just tell a story. And I felt like almost like the water was forcing me to be accountable to it. Like if I was slipping up, if I was trying to be clever and wise and I was thinking more about my ego, I could sense that the water was disappointed in me. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is like live, that people are hearing this, but this is the truth, is that I really feel like it because there's something about water that is like cleansing, that is transformative. And myself at that time, transitioning from precarious housing to stable housing, and healing from a great amount of trauma at that time, is that the lake really gave me this chance to center my readers, instead of centering my wants and my desires to be like, you know, like a renowned author. Instead, it's just about writing a story that counts. And so, yeah, so that's how it's changed for sure.
Mm. Brilliant, beautiful. It is an amazing, you know, for someone who came to Toronto, it is a stunning lake and a stunning kind of vista to stare at and to be inspired by. We have run out of time. Thank you very much, Catherine. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Your book, Scarborough, was one of those books that was recommended to me by so many people when I arrived to Canada. It was a brilliant, beautiful, angry, inspiring, heartbreaking book. But I will be very, very intrigued to see the film adaptation when it finishes. And we'll all wait till the beginning of September to read Crosshairs. So thank you very much. Thank you again to the AGO. Thank you everyone for watching and sticking through the little technical hitch. And join us again next Tuesday for another conversation. So thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Roland. It's wonderful to meet you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.